Hey guys, as Carolina said, my name is Sebastiano Armeli, and I work in the monetization team at Spotify in New York. And today I'm going to cover a few interesting things on how you can enforce coding standards in a JS project. So I'm going to start off looking at the meaning of the two keywords here, which are enforcing and standards. So the verb to enforce, if you look at the dictionary, to enforce means to put or keep in force, to compel obedience to. So an example, if traffic laws will be strictly enforced. So usually the connotation you give to this word is kind of negative, right? You think about enforcing like stopping creativity, blocking you, putting you kind of in jail. But I'm trying to convince you in this talk that in some cases, enforcing comes for a good reason. So you can enforce something to enable creativity and to enable to focus your team on the right thing. And the thing that we are trying to enforce here are standards. Standard is a noun that means a rule or principle that is used as a basis for judgment. So it's pretty much like a rule or something that is defined by a community of people. So how does this apply to code, to JS code? So let's have a look at some cases where we don't have standards. So if you look at this code, clearly, I mean, it works fine. There are no errors, but there is no style here, like no conventions. It's like if there is a new developer coming along, it won't know how to write JS code in this code base. If you just commit your code using like random coding messages, like, it will work, trust me, you don't know like what's going on behind this commit. If you create like random names for your files and you put everything under like one root folder, you pretty much like, it's fairly confusing, you don't know the meaning of the different files. I'm being very extreme here. I guess no one does this. But the concept is that if you don't have standards in a project, you'll end up with absolute chaos. And it's not like vodka. So what we're trying to get here is that we are trying to avoid this chaos, and we are enforcing through enforcing standards. And the key concept here is automation. So we are trying to say that if you enforce standards, you should be able to automate through tools a few things. And the rules that you decide, they need to be defined by your team. So there are no dictators. There shouldn't be any dictators in a code base or in a project. The team should come to a consensus. So consensus means come to an agreement. So maybe different developers have different opinions. They prefer different things, different coding style. But the main thing for a project is having agreement and people just being okay with a few rules. And that's really important because, when people come along, they know the direction of the project. As an example here, I'm going through a few tools and principles that we use in our ad library at Spotify. I'm working on this library with a bunch of people at the moment. It's a JS project that is used to render ads on Spotify, on the desktop client, and on the web player. So yeah, there is a web player at Spotify if you go to play.spotify.com. And the type of ads that we are able to render through this library are like banner, like this giant banner here, or like audio ads or video ads. So the summary of the things that we're gonna see are something related to IDEs, editor config, quality and style tools, git commit standards, build tools, transpiler, complexity tools, testing tools, automated release flow, setup script, and documentation. So a bunch of things that they should help you to set the standards in your project. in your library, in this case. So let's start with editor config. The editor config project is basically a set of two things. The plugin that you install on your IDE. There are plugins for pretty much all the IDEs available, and a dot file called editor config. The purpose of this project is enabling to have a coding style consistent across editors. So these are dot editor config file, and there are a bunch of rules here. You can go through them very quickly. So the first one, root equal true, tells the plugin to stop here and to consider this file. Then we set indent style, which in this case is space. It's kind of standard, space, and 2 spaces is a kind of a standard for most of the JS projects. But you can choose tab if your team agrees on that. End of line, LF, so we use the Unix standard, line feed. But if you guys use Windows, you can use carriage return line feed. Char set, UTF-8, pretty standard. Trim trailing white space, true, so we basically say to trim white space at the end of the line. And then we insert a new line at the end of the file. It's pretty standard kind of editor config. Second topic is coding style and quality tools. The purpose of those tools is basically to prevent bugs, to improve code maintainability and readability, and have a set of rules that are easy to use and understand. So part of those tools are JSint, JSLint, ESLint, JSCheckStyle. Probably you're already familiar with those tools. The most popular probably is JSint. So for example, one of the main things that JSint, for example, does is preventing bugs, being able to identify bugs. So for example, if you've got a code like this, you've got an increment function with a return statement which is broken into lines. Using JSint, you're able to identify these kind of bugs. Or if you have like a leaking variable, so if you got an assignment like this, so you've got Y and Z which are leaking, so they're global. JSint is able to identify these kind of problems. But also you've got coding style tools. Those coding style tools are really great because they allow you to automate things that they don't need human interaction. So for example, when you submit a PR and you need a code review from someone, most of the time what happens is that the first thing that you look at is the coding style of the PR before looking at the content. But if you use a tool, if you use the right tool, you're sure and you're able to automate the check. You pretty much don't need to check the style of a PR. You go straight into the content and you can focus on the things that really matter, so business value and fixing bugs, rather than looking at style. In terms of tools, as I said, JSint is the most popular tool. It was a fork from JSLint, which is the tool that Crockford wrote. It's a static quality tool. And we used to use it, and the way JSint works is through a dot file called JSint-rc. This was a kind of a subset of the rules that we had. So example of rules you've got in JSint are like, for example, curly true, which enforces people to have curly braces around blocks, or late def equal true, which basically enforces to have a definition, to define a variable before using it, and a bunch of other rules. Usually, JSint is used more for quality rather than style, even though there are some style kind of rules. If you want to be specific on style instead, probably the best tool is JSCS, JSCheckStyle. JSCheckStyle comes also with a gulp plugin and grunt plugin, similar as JSint, and it's got the JSCSRC.file, which the set of rules. And as I said here, they're all specific to style. So for example, you have a rule for disallow mixed spaces and tabs, or define the maximum line length, which is for us was 80. But nowadays, what we use and we find really, really great is ESLint. ESLint is a tool that wrote by Nicholas Zakas. And the amazing thing about ESLint is that it's got a huge set of rules, more extensive than JSConf. It's able to incorporate quality and style rules, and also is able to, you can write rules. So you can set up your custom rule. Because you can use Esprit, which is a fork from prima, and you can set up any rule. Similarly as the other tools, works through a dot file, ESLint RC file. And there is also a gulp plugin and a grunt plugin available. That's the first part of the dot file. So you need to specify a parser. In our case, our parser is Babel ESLint, because we use Babel and ES6. If you do that, you need to install Babel ESLint as a package, because it's an external package. Second section is environment, so you can set a few environment variable, global environment variables, such as the standards for browser, Node, Mocha, and ES6. And then you define the section with the rules. This is a subset of the rules we have. So if you look at those rules, one thing that you can notice here, differently from JSConf, in JSConf you got the rule and true or false to say you want to apply this rule or not. With the ESLint, you have a number, which is like 0, 1, or 2. 2 means that you want that rule to throw an error. If you say 0, you disallow that rule. If you say 1, you will throw a warning. So you've got that nice feature of throwing warning, which you don't have in JSConf. And also, you have the option of passing arguments. So for example, in the rule EQ, 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 you can pass smart as an argument. And specifically, this rule, for example, tells us that we want to throw an error if we don't use the triple equal, except for some situation like you're comparing against null, or you're comparing literals, or you're comparing against the value of a type of. But you can see other example where, for example, you say quotes and you pass single because you're enforcing the single quote. For example, another rule is no unused vars, which is, so the number is 2, so we want us to throw an error if we don't respect this rule. And also we pass args none as an argument. So that means that we'll throw an error if there are unused variables, aside from the variables that come from an argument of a function. So for example, here we've got test1 function, which defines the variables C and D, so they are unused, so we'll throw an error. Instead, the second function, test2, we've got C, which is unused, but is part of is one of the arguments, one of the parameters of this function, so it won't throw an error. So it's really, as you can see, it's really powerful tool to set quality and style. And as I said, the other nice thing is that you got quality and style. So all the things you can get with JSCS, you can get also with ESLint. So for example, those are rules specifically for style. You can say enforcing the quotes to be single, indentation to be 2, no trading spaces, and no mixed spaces and tabs, for example. And other thing is that you can also set custom rules. So let's say we are creating a rule that disallows the use of the object constructor. It's already existing. This from the code of ESLint, which is called no new object. This is the code that is able to make this rule. So it's using prima, So you will pass a context, which is an object that you can use to throw errors, and also from the context you can get the arguments that you pass into a rule, and also you can deal with the node, which is the AST node. In this case, a new expression, because I'm looking at creating a new object. So it's in this case, it's pretty straightforward, but if you get familiar with S prima, it's really nice to build your own rule. Another tool that we use for coding quality is JS Inspect. It's a really tiny library, but it's really nice because it allows you to identify really easily code duplications. And we use it in our build. Third thing is Git commit standards. As I showed you before, commits are important because you want to know what happens in the history of your library, of your project. So what we do, we use the standards from AngularJS. We don't use Angular, but we find those standards to be really nice because it allows you to define three things. First of all, the type of commit. So you can say if this commit is a feature, it's a fix, it's a style kind of commit related, refactor, or something related to test, or just a choring thing. Then second thing, you define the scope, so like a component that you're touching, and then you describe what the commit does. But also the other main reason why we do this is because we want to have a nice changelog from our Git commits, because we are using a library. We are creating a library that is used across the company. So we want people to have a clear understanding of what we're publishing in different versions. So we use this package called conventional changelog, which is able to, based on the AngularJS commit standards, to generate a changelog MD file. And that's kind of how it looks, the changelog generated from the commit messages. Other thing are build tools. I guess everyone here uses build tools. In general, they're really nice because it allows you to have multiple tasks and automate things. We used to use Grunt, which is great, but recently we switched to Gulp because it's slightly faster. And the classic tasks we use are Gulp test for running tests and Gulp dev just to transpile and to watch the source file, the source folder. An example of a subset of our Gulp file JS looks like this. So this one is just a task for ESLint. I would recommend to use the Gulp load plugins module, which allows you to load all the plugins automatically, as long as the plugin starts with Gulp dash. But it's kind of pretty standard, but really nice to, like being able to identify one build tool that works for your team. And ES6, I'm a big fan of ES6. In general, we use it in our source code, so we can use all the nice features such as using fat arrow functions, let and const, classes, map set, collections, but since we are the only kind of library and project using ES6 at Spotify, we use Babel to compile, to transpile ES6 code into ES5. So we basically write our code in the source folder, and then we run a task, gulp ES6, which transpiles the code into ES5, into the dist folder. And then we publish into our private registry the dist folder. So other packages, they basically read from the dist folder, from the ES5 version. But for us, it's really nice to start writing the code that is future-proof, so using all the nice features from ES6. Of course, we can't use all of them. We can't use weak maps and proxy because they can be transpiled. Another nice tool we use is Plateau for complexity. So Plateau allows you to identify a few values around the maintainability of your code. We run this task on the Jenkins build for each commit, and Plateau generates a really nice report, HTML report, So for each commit, we know exactly the complexity of our code, and we can keep the history of it. So we can notice if our code goes up or down. One thing we haven't figured out is how we can put thresholds on this. So for example, if the build will break if, for example, the complexity of your code goes over like a certain level. The maintainability of your code goes over a certain level. Testing, of course, because everyone writes tests here. But we use Quick Start to compile our JS code. Quick Start is a Spotify. We open source this tool. It's like kind of a browserify tool. We made this package initially because we had some Spotify-specific things. So that's why we're using it extensively. And we use Mocha as a test framework and Karma as a test runner for unit and integration tests. This is an example of a spec for our video ads, for example. As you can see, describe 8 are from Mocha. We use Sign-on for stubbing and spying. And we use Chai and specifically expect.js for expectations. So yeah, I mentioned this for unit and integration. For functional testing, we use Selenium, but we don't run it on the same project because we need to run the whole client and it requires more effort there. These are kind of a subset of our Karma Conf. I don't know if you ever used Karma before, but Karma is a tool that allows you to run tests in the browser. It's got a few different plugins. For example, there is a fixture plugin that we use, and we run our tests locally on Chrome. But you can run on a different browser on Phantom.js, for example. One of the features I really like is automating the release flow or our package. So it's basically a Jenkins pipeline that we've got, which is made of 2 different builds. The first one is a commit build, which runs for each commit. So it runs tests on Source Labs. So Source Labs is a service that allows you to have, to just borrow virtual machines with different browsers. So we can target a specific browser on a VM. So we run those tests on the build commits, and also we generate the Plateau reports on the build commit. And after this, we've got a manual step. So if the build is successful, you can trigger a manual step in Jenkins. So you got the drop-down where you can specify the type of release you want to do. So you can specify a patch, a minor, a major release. So at any time, we know when we want to release. Like we all decide together, meetings or Slack. We say, okay, let's release. Let's do a minor version. Let's do a major version. So we go in Jenkins. We choose the right option. And then there are gulp tasks. That basically what they do, they just publish the package to our private NPM registry, and also they generate the changelog. So at the end of the, for each release, we got a nice changelog. We got a new version on NPM. Another kind of a nice thing is having a setup script, which is just a small script that each new developer will run as soon as starts the project. So we'll help the developer running tests, setting up, packages, and installing Git hooks. So for example, a pre-commit hook or a post-merge hook. I would really recommend it to have it in your project. It's just something very easy for everyone to have. And another main focus is documentation. So we really stress the README file. One thing I do when there is a new starter in my team is that I basically give him like the README file and contributing MD. And if he's able to, as a test, you should be able to start committing in our code base without asking us anything. If we do this, means that we are at a good point in our documentation. If we are not able to do this, means that we are not. So the README file is basically for us just a way of explaining, what our project does, different ad formats that we serve. And the contributing instead is more about the set of tools and standards. So pretty much what I've been going through just now. Also, we got a doc folder, which contains a few kind of a style guide around the way we use the ES6. So we basically use the Airbnb kind of style guide for ES6. So for example, we got an MD file saying avoid using var and use let and const, and we explain the different kind of examples or way to use let and const. So again, for new starters or for people that they want to collaborate to our project, but they don't know much about ES6. And also, really tiny thing is we like keeping a mailmap.file, which is just comes from a Git short log. So you can summarize the authors of your project, plus there's a bit of normalization around the emails that you use. Because, for example, people commit work at home or work, so sometimes there are different emails set for the Git account. Anyway, so these are a set of tools and kind of standards that we use. And my main point here is that I'm not saying that those are the tools that all the community or you guys should use. The main point here is that I think that if you have standards in your code, you can really focus your energy and the energy of your team on business value without worrying about small and tiny things. Plus, setting a direction, it's nice for the whole team. And the other main thing, having a consensus from the whole team. So everyone needs to agree on a rule. So for example, if there is a new team member, it's really important that his opinion, it gets the consensus for those standards as well. And yeah, so I published my slides on Speaker Deck, and that's all for me. Thanks.
Okay, so we have two questions from Twitter. First one being, how do you introduce new style rules? Do you change old code immediately that does not apply?
Yeah, if we decide for new rules, for example, it happened when we switched from JSConf to ESLint, we had to fix a few things. But if the team agrees on that those are the rules that are right, I think that works. That's a good thing.
And the second question is, how hard was it to change your workflow from Grunt to Gulp? Because we are using Grunt right now, and they're wondering how hard it was.
So initially, it started as a hack project. So where we were trying out if really the performance of Gulp was better than Grunt, because we didn't know. I mean, we thought it was the case, but we want to verify. So in this hack project, we created a PR, and we had all the same, basically, the same as a Grunt file, a Gulp file, same tasks. We had to do a bit of research, searching for the plugins. And then after we had that, we had the evaluation. We got all together, and we said, you feel like we should move to Gulp? Everyone agreed, so.
So before I ask if there are any more questions, I guess I have a question. You mentioned that you ask everyone at the team so they feel included in all the decision making about processes and standards, which is totally something that I understand as well. But how do you do it in a company of a size like the Spotify is, because that's a pretty big company. So how do you make that behavior scale? Because I could imagine a lot of overhead and conversations and going back and forth.
Right. The thing is, the developers, people actively coding on this library are 6 people, so which is a manageable number to get schedule meetings once every 2 weeks or whenever we need to make those decisions. If there are external, we are kind of the core kind of group. If there are external developers, they commit, I don't know, they've got 3-4 commits in the code base. I mean, they just follow the contributing MD file, which are the standards that we set. But as long as the core developers, which are people that on a daily basis work on it, we all agree on something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions? Questions. Can't see any hands. No? Okay. There are two. He's going to be first because he's closer. I'm sorry. Or maybe there are more.
So,
So I've got a question. Do you monitor and alert on Plateau reports?
Yeah, no, unfortunately we don't, but that's the thing that I'd like to do. Like what I was saying before, yeah, I'd like to have a threshold that will alert us or break the build if we go over it. But yeah, no, we don't do it. But yeah, that's something to look into it.
okay. So what do you think about static typing tools like TypeScript or Flow? They can also improve code quality and readability. What do you think about it?
Type checking? You're talking about type checking?
Yes, like TypeScript or Flow from Facebook. So static typing in JavaScript or something like that.
If you're talking about TypeScript, I mean, I guess it's kind of a different language. I mean, we in general, we believe that we use JavaScript, which is not a typed language. So we should, we don't need type checks. But I looked into Flow from Facebook, looks cool. But we haven't checked it out. But in general, I think that JavaScript is a dynamic language, so it's nice to keep it dynamic, if you know how to use it.
Thanks. Who was in this row? Come on.
Just please don't be throwing the mic because we don't want any casualties.
So first of all, nice presentation. Setting up build process like this obviously takes some time, but do you have any idea or measurements on how long it took you to save that time due to better processes?
Again, I would recommend to use, I don't know if your company allows you to do like hack days. Maybe we are lucky because we are 20% of our time is on, system days and hack days, so which means we can focus on doing refactoring or technical things or doing hack projects. So often what I did, or other team members did, is like allocating time to experiment with those things, and then we built up in a few months. So for example, one Friday we got together and we tried converting all our code base to ES6 just for one package, and then we finished up converting everything into ES6. Or another time, we spend even weekends, like our own time, trying out the Jenkins Pipeline, and then presenting it to the team, and then getting an agreement. So I guess most of the time works with having you have to have a pitch if you believe in something, and then maybe, you have to spend your own time, in some cases, or hack project, and then presenting it to a team. There have been cases where people have presented something that, like, for example, two people didn't agree on, and then things didn't go through. But that's just,
Okay, last question. That was very sneaky.
Short question. What is the position to naming conventions? Is that enforceable via JS check style?
Naming conventions?
Yeah, with prefixes or suffixes, for example. Or general meaningful names. Nothing else like item or element would mean nothing in most cases.
So you're asking if JS check style has got like a prefix or checking for naming conventions? To be honest, I don't know. I don't know if JS check style has got rules for checking that. We weren't using it, so I don't really know.
Yeah, but you just say you can write your own styles, so it should be possible, but you don't know if you are using that.
No, you're talking about JS check style or yes lint?
Yeah, check style.
To be honest, I don't know if there are rules around checking naming conventions. I don't know. We probably should check the documentation.
Thanks.
I really like how this afternoon transformed to basically being a bunch of talks about how to improve like standards within companies and startups and how to improve collaboration. So thank you for that. That was amazing. And we're going to have our last talk for the afternoon. Sorry, what? Small break? Okay, well, we're going to have 10 minutes of break. I don't know what we're going to do. I guess we're going to, I don't know, dance or like argue about technology. What else can we do? I don't know. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.